Happy Sunday, everyone. Hope y'all are doing good. Today is a very special milestone for me. I have reached 365 days, one entire year, without pornography. I am very happy right now. Very, very happy. This video will function. It is going to be the most important video that I will ever upload to this channel, probably. It's going to be discussing lust, pornography, all of its different facets, how it affects us, how it is destroying men, right? And things that I did to overcome it, right? So starting off, I want to just acknowledge that this was not a solo effort. I'd like to thank God, first and foremost. I couldn't have done it without him. Truth be told, I couldn't. This was a malady of the spirit, and no amount of human intervention could ever fix that, right? I'd like to thank my parents for loving me and doing what they could to keep me on the straight and narrow, right? And I'd like to give a shout out to my friends as well, who stood up for me, supported me, and just did what friends are supposed to do, right? I never thought I would reach this point. Never ever. I'd been a slave to this for about 6 years, and I truly never thought that I would overcome it. I never gave up, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I was always like, can I beat this? Can I overcome this? And I more or less have. So, where did all of this start? How did it end? What did I do? Okay. So, lust had always been a weird thing for me. Um, Even when I was young, I was like aware of it. I didn't understand it, right? I didn't know what sex was. I didn't know anything like that, but I was always like kind of aware of it, right? And it affected me, right? And I've heard stories of 30-year-old men who are like, yeah, I got hooked on pornography when I was like 6 years old, which just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, and that's why this channel exists. I want to bring as many men out of that pit as possible because it's a deep pit, and you have a lot of company down there. Let me tell you, there are so many men who fight this. So it all came to a head when I turned 13, and what I would say is the third worst day of my life. I'd received my first handheld device. It was a Kindle Fire. I'd never really had access to the internet before, which I mean, like I would have like small interaction with it, but nothing crazy. And as a kid, I hated that, but now I'm grateful that I had the childhood that I did because this device was more or less the beginning of the end, right? And it was a Kindle, right? It was made for reading because I was an avid reader back in those days, but I found a way to access pornography. The morning after, I had never felt so sick with myself. I knew that I had done something very wrong, right? Without even knowing what sex was, how sacred it was, all this stuff, right? It tore me apart. And I went to my mother and father, right? And I was like, I told them what I did. And they were relatively understanding. They never gave me the illusion that I hadn't done something wrong, but Dad was just like, okay, maybe it's time we have the talk, right? So, we did that, and I came to understand a little better what these desires were, right? And why I was having them, right? Every teenage guy goes through this, right? You hit that age, you hit puberty, your hormones start going crazy. It's a weird time, but it is necessary. The problem was that I still didn't fully grasp the sanctity of sex, more or less. Um, so it began to develop over time, right? And I began to let lust consume me. So what I would do is I would like look at like women in bikinis and supermodels, stuff like that, and like very sexually provocative material. I didn't look at porn for several years, right? But I was looking at things that were pretty close, like barely just skirting the line, right? But it was like obeying the letter of the law, right? Oh, I'm not looking at pornography. I basically was. Like, I'm under no at this point in my life. I'm under no illusions, right? I count it as pornography. I just do at this point because it led me down a slippery slope. I could only hold out for so long, and eventually the dam burst, and I looked for pornography, and that went on for a couple years. And it was this never-ending up and down cycle that I'm sure many men are familiar with. I'd go to porn, right? I'd do what you do, and then I'd be like, "Wow, I can't believe I did that. I'm never going to do it again." And then 3 days later, 4 days later, I would be right back doing the exact same thing. It was just this never-ending cycle. It all came to a head on the second worst day of my life. You sensing a theme here? I had sworn off pornography for about. Well, I'd sworn off pornography, right? And I almost made it to a year. I almost did. I made it about 11 months, and then one night I caved in. And the day afterwards, my parents became fully aware of what I had been consuming, what I had been looking at, and putting into my mind. And I am surprised that they can still look me in the eyes. I will never forget that day. It was so bad. I was like, I knew that I had royally fucked up. Okay, pardon my French, but it was just I was like, this has got to stop. This has to stop right now, right now. So I got back on the grind. I was like, I'm gonna make it to a year. It was around this time that I discovered Purpose Driven, a YouTube channel. I've had the pleasure of conversing with him directly. He inspired me to start this channel, right? And he really changed my life. Truth be told, he changed my life. And I don't think it's a coincidence that these two things happened within the same time frame, right? So I began to put real effort into this struggle, right? And I began to try everything possible to get rid of this addiction, right? Because it was an addiction, right? I've heard people say like, "Oh, there's a healthy way to enjoy pornography. Oh, it's okay in just small quantities, or some most brilliant minds in history were avid porn, enjoyers, right?" I just That's not true. That's not true. Okay, I've seen videos, right, from acclaimed neuroscientists who are like, "Yeah, porn actually messes with your brain, not in a good way. Definitely not in a good way." Right? It's like you can't even make the idea that it was healthy, but I never got to that point where I was trying to make an argument that it was healthy because I always knew it was sinful, right? But in an atheistic world, sin doesn't exist. Let's just be real, right? In a world that is atheist, there is no such thing as wrong, right? I never reached that point. I've always been a religious man, but the sin still ruled me, and it rules a lot of other guys who are religious too, right? In fact, I think it is the number one thing that every man struggles with. I've yet to speak to a guy who did not battle with this in some way, right? So I began to lock in. I began to understand myself, lust, marriage, all these things, right? All these things. Fast forward to today, I have reached 1 year without pornography, without seeking pornography. I've run into it, I think, twice in the past year, just on accident. Just like I've been on the internet, right? You're gonna find it, right? And I'll probably discuss some of that a little more later. But what you have to understand is that lust is the lowest possible version of yourself, right? For me, it always felt like there were two sides to who I was, right? There was, me, right? The good natured, decent human being, right? The person who I inhabited the most, right? In my day to day life. But there was another side. It was my perverted, evil, lustful self, right? And I did not embody him publicly or necessarily day to day, but he showed up when he wanted to, right? And I always felt like there were two people in my brain, just like fighting it out constantly, right? And unfortunately, I would let the evil side win in many cases. So I wonder if any other men can relate to that, right? I might sound like a crazy person, but I wonder if any other men can relate to that because I always thought of myself as a good person, right? But it was always that one thing, right? Like whenever it came to lust, I always seemed to make the wrong choice, right? That's good stuff. I always seem to make the wrong choice without fail. So lust is the most baseline version of yourself, right? You are basically like just an animal, right? It's you're just you're on the prowl. You're looking for something to satisfy your sexual desires. And that's it. That's all you care about. And it just that's no way to live, man. That's just no way to live. I decided that I wanted to inhabit a higher version of myself. So I began to truly figure out what I needed to do and what I needed to become great sentence. what who I needed to become in order to be the best version of myself. Right? The best possible version of myself. And I discovered some interesting things. First off, pornography is not the enemy. Lust is the enemy. The issue with that 11-month stretch where I wasn't looking at pornography, it was more like letter of the law kind of thing. I wasn't looking at pornography, but I was still letting lustful thoughts and desires consume me, right? I was constantly ruminating on sex and sexual desires and fantasies and stuff. And you cannot live like that because eventually that dam is going to burst. And it did. It did. I went right back to pornography. There's only so long you can hold out against that stuff. So I began to realize that I don't have to be porn, I have to be lust in its entirety. In its entirety, right? Because you can beat a porn addiction, but still be very lustful. But if you beat lust, you beat a porn addiction along with it, right? So that's what I began to do. And I want people to pay attention to this part in the video. I was looking at my average watch time, right? Most people only make it like 3 minutes into the video, on average. I'm not offended by that, right? People are allowed to do what they do, right? And I do that too, right? I don't always watch a video all the way through, but it's disheartening to see that some people just care that little about improving themselves, right? They'll click on the video, but they won't absorb it. They won't like actually apply it to their lives. They won't even watch it all the way through, right? But that is their choice, and I will never take away a choice from someone. You have to make the choice to be better on your own. Okay, getting off topic. So what I began to do was I began to pay attention to how I felt when I was in a lustful or horny mood, right? The feeling of arousal was very distinct. It's very powerful. I'm sure you are all are familiar with that. So I sort of trained myself mentally to be like, if I start feeling that way, I immediately fixate on something else. Immediately. Okay. The Bible has a verse like take every thought captive to Christ, right? And that's kind of what I did, right? If I was dwelling on something lustful, right? Or something involving sex, it would undoubtedly cause a physical aroused reaction, right? And I would immediately like catch on, alarm bells would go off in my head, and I'd be like, focus on something different. Focus on something different, okay? So that is one thing. You need to train yourself to have an alarm go off anytime you are feeling horny, okay? And you need to force whatever you're thinking about currently out of your mind. Now, that's easier said than done, right? Because it is a powerful impulse, but find something that you love to think about. Find something that you love to think about, right? And focus on that instead. So for me, this is going to sound weird. I would focus on Fortnite gameplay and weapon loot pool balancing. I, there's probably people laughing right now, and I don't blame them. That's a very silly thing to do, but it worked because I really like Fortnite and I enjoy using the different guns in there, right? So, and it has like a technical aspect too, right? With the weapon balance, right? If you've ever played a video game, sometimes there's a gun in there that just like is so good that it beats out every other gun, right? So, I would try and come up with these different loot pools and weapon combinations that weren't like super busted or overpowered, right? And create like a very balanced overall playing field. I'm getting off on a tangent. But it was a somewhat technical problem that I was passionate about, right? And it worked, right? If I just started focusing on that, it was a good way to take my mind off the lustful thoughts, right? So if you're experiencing lustful thoughts, what is something that you can think about instead? What is something that will completely draw your attention away and cause you to focus fully on this new thought? That's just what I did. That's just what I did, and it for the most part worked. Another thing I began to try was semen retention. I began to retain my seed. I stopped jerking off. This video is going to be kind of crass, kind of vulgar, but this needs to be discussed. It just does. So I stopped doing that. And the interesting thing about semen retention is that when you release your seed, you release a lot of energy, right? You always feel drained afterwards, right? When you start to retain, though, that energy builds up. And goodness gracious, man, you feel like Superman. I'm not even kidding. My longest streak thus far has been a little over 3 months, right? I unfortunately broke that streak and I've kind of struggled to get it back up, but I am working on it, right, currently. And those 3 months were the best of my life. I had so much energy. You're happier. You're very goal oriented too, which we'll discuss later on in this video. But you are just an unstoppable force of nature. You look better. You sound better. You feel great. You're confident. You're assertive. You're everything a man should be. Right? You're everything a man should be. Right? Your testosterone levels go up. You start putting in better work at the gym. like it has a whole host of benefits. And I will admit it is hard to do because you have these periods where you are just super horny, and that's very hard to get through. Okay, that is very hard to get through. But if you can do it, I'm not kidding. You are unstoppable. Unstoppable. There is nothing that can prevent you from achieving your goals and dreams. Okay? It is crazy, right? So I recommend every man try this, right? And this is something that, boxers like Mike Tyson, right? Mike Tyson, before a big fight, he doesn't spend time around women, right? He doesn't, sure, I forgot how to tastefully say this. He doesn't indulge himself, right? Because he needs all of that energy, right? And he understands that, your seed is your power, more or less, right? It causes your testosterone to go up. You're focused. You're laser focused. It's crazy. And again, you feel amazing. I've never felt better in my life. It is wild. You're probably going to get it wrong more times than you get it right, but all you need is to get it right, okay? And make it for a very long period of time, right? But yeah, that's what Mike Tyson does, and he's like, look at him, he's a beast. He's an absolute beast most of the time. So I would recommend you do that if you can control yourself. If you can make it through those horny periods, and it's like a wave. It goes up and down. Like 2 weeks in, you'll get like really really horny for like 2 to 3 days. You go down to a bit to like just normally. After like a week or two, you go back to that point. Then you go down. At some point, though, you reach a plateau. And I'm not even kidding you. Sex doesn't even like occur to you or matter to you anymore, right? Once you hit like that 2 month mark, you just stop thinking about it. You stop fixating on it, and oddly enough, it just doesn't become a priority or anything. Which you think would be kind of the opposite, right? Because you've like retained your sexual energy for so long, but it's not. You just like reach a point where you're like, sex exists. There's a time and a place for it. Now is not that time. I got to focus on something better, right? It's the best feeling in the world. I recommend every man tries it, but it is hard. I have no illusions. It is challenging, but that shouldn't stop you from doing it. The third thing was what I discussed in my video, in my first video. It is the biggest video on my channel, and I'm not just making this because it performs well in the algorithm, because I know content like this absolutely does, but I'm making this video because I want to celebrate. So I've hit 1 year free from pornography, and there are so many men out there who just can't even make it a week. They can't even make it a week, and that just breaks my heart. But this is more or less my testimony, right? And I hope it helps. If it even helps at least one guy out there overcome this, then I'm satisfied. I am. I am. It's worth it to me. So having a higher goal to fixate on benefits you so much, right? I began to flesh out what I wanted from life, where I wanted to end up, right? What I wanted to do, who I wanted to be with. And I realized that pornography was antithetical to that. I want to marry a good, loving woman one of these days. There's no place for pornography in a relationship like that. If I'm married, I can't be doing that. I can't be looking at porn, because when you get married, that woman is the only woman who you should ever be intimate with, right? And it breaks my heart that I will never be able to look my wife in the eyes and tell her that she was the only woman that I ever saw naked, right? That's a little vulgar, but it's so sad, right? Because I'm a very devoted man, right? And I care a lot about who I'm going to end up with. I don't know her yet. I've probably never even met her yet. But I wanted to. I love her enough. I don't know her, but I love her enough to want to stop my sinful ways and have her be the sole source of sexual pleasure that I ever have. Okay, that would be a good way to describe it. So I was like, no woman worth having is going to be okay with me looking at pornography. And this extends beyond a wife, right? Let's say I have kids, right? What would my daughter's takeaway be from me looking at porn? Her takeaway would be that all men are lustful, they're only interested in women for sexual pleasure. She herself is only a source of sexual pleasure, right? That would probably be her takeaway. And my sons would be like, oh, dad can't control himself. Dad ruined his relationship with mom because he couldn't control himself. Is this what I'm supposed to be? As a father, right? You have to be a role model for your children, especially the boys. Especially the boys. The boys. I did a paper on this for college, but the boys who grow up without a father or a good father, it's basically over. I'm not even kidding. It is basically over for them from birth. And I want my sons to be good men. I want them to be great men. And they will never reach that point if their father could not control himself, could not control his desires. So pornography had to go. I discovered a dream and a purpose that I wanted more than the porn. Okay? Because at the end of the day, my greatest desire in this world is to meet a beautiful, beautiful woman and raise a beautiful family with her. That's that's all I want, honestly, and to help young men, right? That is also my purpose. But even then, I can't help young guys, right? Because one of the biggest issues that young guys face is lust. How the hell am I gonna help them fix their lives if I myself don't have my life fixed, right? It didn't make sense. It didn't compute, right? Now, those are the three things that I used, right? I discovered a dream that I wanted more than the pornography. Excuse me. That soda's getting me. Okay. I discovered a dream that I wanted more than pornography. Okay. I got on semen retention, right? I did all these different things. And together they allowed me to reach this point. Now, granted, I have had times where I've dropped my guard and lustful thoughts invade my mind, and I do things I'm not proud of, right? But this is still an incredible milestone, and I have actually dedicated this year to fighting lust, right? So I was like, I'm slipping again, right? I got cocky, I got complacent. It's time to lock back in, right? And that's something. This is something that I'm going to have to be vigilant on, right? Just because I made it 1 year doesn't mean that I shouldn't stop trying, okay? Because this addiction could always rear its head at any point. At any, oh, excuse me, jeez, at any point, right? And if I ruin a year of hard work, think about it. You only get 70 years, right? Provided all goes well, right? You have about 70 years, right? Am I really going to throw out an entire year? No. When I ran across those error pornography some of those other times, right, on accident, I didn't let it get to me. And I'm sure I'm going to run across it more and more in my life, right? But the key is to not let it get to you. And the way you don't let it get to you is you don't indulge in those thoughts, right? because you're going to, if you see something like that, certain thoughts are going to crop up. They just are, but you do not indulge in them. You do not entertain them. You're like, get out of my head. Get the fuck out of my head. Just go. I'm not. We're not doing this. Okay. And you've got to rule over yourself. The thing about lust is that it is a physical thing, right? It is kind of it is built into the male brain to pursue sexual pleasure with a female, right? That's just how it is. And it is the biological imperative that has kept our species alive, right? And God put it there for a reason. But that doesn't mean you should let it control you, okay? I've seen so many guys mess up their lives because they just could not control themselves. And suddenly they're a father by 17 or 18, right? And suddenly they have a kid and a woman to take care of, and they haven't even graduated high school. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I'm grateful that I've never reached that point. But yeah, it is difficult because it is a biological thing. So from now on, I'm going to amend my language. Okay. Can lust ever be beaten? Like fully? Can you remove it entirely from yourself and just never feel it again? No, it's not possible. What you can do is you can let is that you can sorry. What you can do is that you can let it stop control. What am I trying to say? What you can do is stop letting it control you. Third tries the charm. You cannot beat lust, but you can stop letting it control you. You can prevent it from controlling you. Okay? And that's more or less what I've done, right? Lust will always be here because, again, it is a biological function. It is there for a reason, but it is meant to be used solely in the context of marriage for procreation and creating more humans, right? The Bible's very clear on that, right? And that's the divine design for marriage, right? But outside of that, there's no excuse and there's no reason to indulge in that kind of behavior, right? And boy, did I indulge myself, man. I regret that I can't say that I stayed pure, right? And I don't know what I'm gonna do for my sons, right? Because at the end of the day, I can't protect them from this, and they're going to run into this problem at some point in their lives. So I'm just gonna have to do what I can to guide them, to support them, to raise them into the men that I wish I had been, right? It's been a long journey. Um, Lust still, creeps into my life, right? I've alluded to that in other videos, right? But the fact that I have reached this milestone is proof that this can be beaten. If you can only take away one thing from this video, it is that you can control yourself. Okay, I was down bad for 7 years. I was down so bad. I could not control myself. I was a lustful, disgusting, repulsive thing. But I chose something better and I built myself into the man that I am today. So if you only have one takeaway from this video, it is that you should not give up and that it is possible. I am living proof that you can see victory over this in your life. You may not be able to ever beat it, not fully, but you can gain control over it as opposed to it controlling you. Okay? Gain control over it as opposed to letting it control you. One more time. Gain control over it rather than letting it control you. It's a hard thing to do. Again, it is a powerful biological urge, right? And the world The modern day world is dedicated to feeding that urge, right? You got OnlyFans, you got Instagram thirst traps, you got explicit ads even on YouTube, right? By the way, if you are getting commercials and ads that are causing you to think lustful thoughts, look into the Brave web browser. Okay, Brave web browser. It blocks everything automatically. I've been using it for years. It's a lifesaver. Okay. Please install it. If you're getting those ads, right, and they're causing you to fall into this sin, please get it. Okay. Please. This is a very long video, but I wanted to discuss this, right? You can win in your life. Absolutely. You can stop letting this control you, and you can save it for the right time, right? There is a time for that desire, right? But it is within the confines of marriage with the woman who you are betrothed to for the purposes of making more children, right? Or for the purposes of deepening your relationship with the woman you're betrothed to, right? But that's it. Fornication, sex outside of marriage, pornography, OnlyFans, no. No, that's you shouldn't be doing that. It never leads anywhere good. Ever, right? So, I hope this video helped. Again, I am living proof that you can do this, okay? And I believe in you. You watching right now, I don't know who you are, and we will probably never meet, but I believe in you so much. I never thought I could get to this point. Never. I just spent years thinking like, I'm never gonna make it to this point. This is a fantasy. This is never gonna happen. And I made it. I made it. And this video stands testament to that. You can do what I did. You can absolutely do what I did, and your life will become so much better. So much better. It is crazy. I only want good things for you guys, right? I only want good things for the men in this world. Lust is such a powerful, powerful weapon that the enemy uses against us, right? And it works. It works, you know. King Solomon, right, with his foreign wives. David with Bathsheba, right? Mohammed with his, I don't even know what he had. I don't even know what to call that. Brothel, maybe. You know, you have all these men who just fell prey to the sin of lust. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. All right. Choose something better. Fight for something better, and I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your weekend. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for the support. Thank you for the views. Thank you for everything. I don't do this for the views. If I can get the channel monetized at some point, I'm going to do that. But I'm doing this because this is my God-given purpose. Unequivocally speaking, I know that this is what is good. That this is what God has called me to do. Even if I have a bit of a mush mouth sometimes. But thank you guys. And share this video with your friends. If you know someone who's fighting lust, who needs a bit of encouragement, send them this video, man. Or encourage them yourself. Form accountability groups among your male friends, right? Just be like, we got to overcome this. So many great men are held back by this, right? So many great men. So if you truly want to be great, you need to overcome this. That's all I got for now. I'll probably have another video up very soon, but yeah, I love you guys with all my heart. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. Stay strong, fight the good fight, and I'll see you guys in the next video.